I have a second just to copy the indictment, Judge? real quick?
Yes.
And just so I'm aware, you want me to read all the counts first and then interpolate after each count, or just read them all at once?
We'll read each count separately.
Okay,
Defense. The state is
sorry?
going to read each count separately and have him respond to his plea, and then we'll go.
If you want to have a trial on these matters, you can have guilty in each count.
And Mr. Stevens.
Yes, ma'am.
If
Yes, ma'am.
there is, because the courtroom is not crowded, if your client's mom or he has other people he wishes to be here.
Okay.
They're more than welcome to be here.
Okay.
But they need to dress appropriately for court. I don't know if the person who was coming in was with him or not, but there was someone in some extremely short shorts. So I don't allow shorts in the courtroom. And if people are wearing hoodies, they need to make sure they take that off.
Okay. Thanks.
It should be working.
About it today.
You're talking, go to the back office and I will go around by the vending machine.
You know? This microphone is not working. Like, it doesn't show that it's working. Just one moment. Like the Zoom mic, like the 187th mic, it doesn't show it as being operable.
Now it's set up Ah, okay. All right, thanks. Whatever you did, Mahia, it worked beautifully. It's like I just walked over. Today is Wednesday. It's, time is moving quickly. It's Wednesday, but it feels like Monday, but this month is close to almost being over. I don't know. Whenever you need a break, just let me know. Just type it in now. Just, yeah. Or if you know what, if you just put BB. But I know it's easier, it's easier for you to probably write break. Okay, let me do it.
Yeah, I can't do break.
Oh, yeah. If you were to just put a B on there, what would happen?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right, for the jury?
I see some people took me up on the bring a pillow. Others, you may have regrets. Please have a seat. And again, if you ever want to take the pillows that are back in the jury room, you're more than welcome to bring them out. Let's see, he knows. All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, good morning. All right, so I know you all took an oath downstairs, but I'm going to give you an oath now as it relates to this case. So if everyone could raise their right hand for me, please. Do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm in the case of the state of Texas versus ALEXIS Morganfield, you will a true verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. All right, state.
Thank you.
And defense, if you could please rise.
True bill of indictment. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury of Bexar County, state of Texas, duly organized and paneled and sworn as such, the January term AD 2021 of the 144th Judicial District Court of said county in said court at said term, do present and to said court that in the county and state aforesaid and anterior to the presentment of this indictment, count one, on or about the 29th day of March 2020, ALEXIS Morganfield, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause the penetration of the mouth of Sarah Fundurianu, a child who was younger than 17 years of age and not the spouse of the defendant, by the defendant's sexual organ.
How do you plead to that?
Not guilty.
Count two, on or about the 29th day of March 2020, ALEXIS Morganfield, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly engage in sexual conduct with Sarah Fundurianu, a female child younger than 17 years, by touching part of the genitals of Sarah Fundurianu with the intent to arouse or gratify the sexual desire of any person.
How do you plead to that?
Not guilty.
Count three, on or about the 29th day of March 2020, ALEXIS Morganfield, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly engage in sexual contact with Sarah Fundurianu, a female child younger than 17 years, by touching the breasts of Sarah Fundurianu with the intent to arouse or gratify the sexual desire of any person against the peace and dignity of the state, signed form of the grand jury.
All right, how do you plead to that?
Not guilty.
All right, thank you. All right, you may be seated. State, do you have opening statements?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you all for coming back and being here today, going through the long process from yesterday. We don't expect this trial to be too long, but we appreciate your patience and for listening carefully to all the evidence that we plan to bring to you throughout the trial. Today, you're going to hear from Sarah Fundurianu. She's a 16-year-old at the time the offense occurred. She was a junior in high school, and she was talking to an individual, a friend, through Instagram, something that I'm sure you know lots of young kids do. They meet people on Instagram. That's how they communicate. That's how they socialize. That's what she was doing. So she has a friend that she met on Instagram and she's talking to him and they decide to meet up. So Sarah gets ready, she does her makeup, she gets dressed, she leaves her home. Her mom sees her leave, she's fine. She says she saw her get ready, she saw her put her makeup on, she saw her leave perfectly calm, perfectly not upset. And she goes. But when she's outside, ready to meet this individual that she's been talking to, she's not greeted by him. She's greeted by 3 other males who came to pick her up in a car. She doesn't know who they are. She's never met them before, but she gets in the car because they say they're going to take her to her friend. So she goes. She's all alone with the 3 males in the car, and they arrive to where her friend lives. It's an apartment complex. And so her friend comes out and he greets her. He gets in the vehicle with her while the other 3 men get out. And what he does is he asks her for sex. He asks her if she will give him head or oral sex. And then he asks her just for regular intercourse. Sarah says no. So he gets out of the car, he goes back into the home. And then another male comes in, another of the 3 males that came to pick her up. And he gets,
Objection, Your Honor. This is covered by the second motion in limine, and we would ask for a sidebar.
All right, that'll be overruled.
he gets in the car. And he also asked Sarah for sex. And Sarah says no. And eventually, Sarah's realizing that this is what she's there for. She's there because the males want to have intercourse with her. And she refuses, and she refuses. And then she wants to go home. But her only way home is with these 3 males. And so eventually, one of the males gets in the car, who we are going to prove to you is the defendant. And he asks her for sex. And then he asks her for oral. And she feels as if she has no other choice but to give him oral sex so she can be done with them and she can go home. And so she does. She gives the defendant oral sex. You're going to hear that he does ejaculate in her mouth. And then she says she wants to go home. But it doesn't end there. Eventually, you're going to hear that they're continuing to ask her for sex. And she's getting more and more upset. She says she wants to call her friend. And they do let her call a friend. But they don't give him the address of where she's at. So she believes she's almost safe. But then they're avoiding the address until he can't find her. And so she's crying in the backseat of the car. They take her to a gas station and they say, we'll take you home. Don't worry, we'll take you home. But then they don't. She gets out of the car at the gas station. She goes in. She's upset. A concerned clerk asks her if she needs any help. She asks to use the phone. And she calls her friend. And eventually her friend comes to pick her up. She calls her mom. She lets her mom know she's okay, but she's crying. We expect you to hear from her mom. We expect her to tell you that she did get a phone call that night, that her daughter was upset. And we expect you to hear that the victim did get home very shaken up. And she eventually tells her sister what happened. We expect you to hear from the sister and for her to tell you what it was like to hear that from the victim. And then because her sister is so concerned about what happened, there's a report made. And eventually the victim does go to the hospital and she is seen by a sexual assault nurse examination nurse. And so we expect you to hear from the nurse. We expect her to tell you what the victim told her happened and what she was able to find on any kind of physical exam that she did. And at the end of this case, we expect you to find that this defendant is guilty of sexual assaulting Sarah. Thank you.
All right, defense.
May it please the court. If you look on the New York Times bestseller list, you will see a lot of novels there. Everybody who reads a novel knows that it isn't true, but it's still really interesting. And it engages their brain. Sometimes it engages their heart and their emotions. And so we invest our time in reading and immersing ourselves in stories, even though we know they're not true, because we perceive that we gain a benefit from doing that. The accusation against my client, Alexis Morganfield, much like a novel, is a story that isn't true. But it's going to be interesting, I guarantee you that. What you're going to hear about is a story of a troubled 16-year-old. We'll get into that later. Who had been out skateboarding and then comes in the evening, puts on makeup, and her mom asks, "Where are you going?" "I'm going skateboarding again." But this time she's wearing makeup. She takes a cell phone, supposedly, according to her story, that has no service, and hoping to meet with somebody that she's never met simply because that person is a rapper. She finds herself willing, with no working phone, according to her story, to get into a car with 3 young men that she does not know, to go see another man that she's never met because he's a rapper. There are going to be several discrepancies in the story. There are going to be several things that don't add up. If her story of what happened is true, you might expect that there might be some evidence that could be found other than simply her testimony. You'll hear about a DNA exam and its shocking result. Novels have shocking contents. This story is going to have some shocking contents too. Very shocking results of the DNA test. You're going to hear things that are inconsistent with a person wanting to stay out of danger. You're also going to hear stories about trying to go buy drugs as part of her story. And then you're going to hear that in the wake of this, she was doing what most people would call cyber stalking or trolling against my client. You don't know my client, we will introduce several things about him, including the fact that on the day in question, he was a 19-year-old rapper from a family with a very rich musical heritage, that he had an online presence and he was trying to promote his music. You'll hear that. And that as a result, lots of people reached out to him wanting a piece of his fame, wanting pieces of him, pieces of his soul, simply because he was becoming famous online and on social media. You will hear that around the time of this incident, that a person named Sarah Pundiranu did contact my client, not in person, but through social media, and started requesting things that he couldn't give, and started posting very negative, defamatory content. You'll find that there was a conversation that we're not going to get to hear enough of, if it comes in at all, where an offer is made simply to ask her to stop defaming me online. What you will hear does not amount to a confession. Again, you'll hear that as well. And at the end of the story, there are going to be a lot of details that just don't add up. This is a story of an up-and-coming musical artist, rapper, trying to work hard to make something of himself to carry on his family's musical legacy. And a troubled 16-year-old girl who wants a piece of that fame and is willing to do whatever she thinks she has to in order to get that and ultimately to take that from him. As always, we asked you to pay attention to the details, and we thank you for your service.
State, call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. State calls Sarah Fundarianu.
All right, can you raise your right hand for me? You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, so I'm gonna need you to make sure that you speak up. Could you state your name for the record?
My name is Sarah Funduriano.
Judge,
Or you
maybe-
can lower your head. Just a moment. I'm gonna take care of that.
Your mind reader, Judge. Thank you.
All right, state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Sarah. Can you please introduce your name or yourself to the jury?
My name is Sarah Funduriano.
Okay. And can you spell your last name for the court reporter?
FUNDUREANU.
And Sarah, where are you from?
I was born in Sacramento, but I've lived in San Antonio my whole life since I was 1.
Okay. So you said you've lived in San Antonio since you were 1?
Yeah.
And so did you go to school and elementary school here?
Yes.
Middle school,
Yes.
high school?
Yes.
Have you graduated high school?
Yes.
What are you currently doing?
I currently attend Northwest Vista College.
What are you studying?
I'm studying criminal justice.
Okay. Do you know what you want to do when you, we say, grow up?
I plan to become an attorney.
We've discussed that already, right?
Yes.
Sarah, what, it might seem like a silly question, but when's your birthday?
July 28th, 2003.
Are you married?
No,
Have you ever been married?
no.
So you understand why you're here today, correct?
I'm sorry?
You understand why you're here today, correct?
Yes.
So do you have any interest as it relates to music?
I like lots of different kinds of music.
Anything in particular?
I listen to rock, EDM, rap, alternative.
Okay. So I want to direct your attention to March 29th of 2020. How old were you then on that day?
I was 16 years old.
And were you going to high school at that point?
Yes.
When did you make some friends in high school?
Yes, I did.
Any friends in particular?
I like specific names or
Did you make a good any necessarily good friends?
yes.
Okay. As far as it relates to this case, I should start with, do you know a person by the name of ALEXIS Morganfield?
Yes.
And how do you know him?
I know him after I knew him since that day, March 29th.
Prior to March 29th of 2020, did you know him?
I did not know him.
Have you ever met him?
No.
Um, if he was a musician, did you listen to any of his music?
No.
Did y'all have any friends in common?
I went to alternative school with his friend's brother, Sterling.
Okay. Do you know Sterling's last name by any chance?
I think it's Green.
And so you went to school with Sterling Green. How did you come into contact with Alexis Morganfield on March 29th of 2020?
His friend DM'd me on Instagram, and his name on Instagram was Jada King. And he had messaged me asking to hang out.
Okay, and did you agree to hang out with him?
Yes.
Did y'all make any plans about hanging out?
Like planning what to do.
Yes.
We plan to smoke.
Okay. And how did y'all make that plan?
Well, he asked me if I wanted to come over and smoke with him.
And did y'all talk in person?
Not before that, no.
Okay. How were y'all communicating?
On Instagram through direct message.
And Instagram, is that something you kind of commonly use to communicate with people?
Yes.
For those of us who might be a little bit older,
Hmm.
such as myself, who might not understand that, what is DMing? I think is what you said.
It's just like a messaging thing. It's kind of like Facebook Messenger. It's its own chat thing where you can like message people on Instagram.
Okay. And do you message them through text, through voice?
It's on the app directly. And it's like not through voice, it was a text message.
And so you had planned with this Jada King, is that what you said, Jada King?
Mm-hmm.
To hang out and smoke.
Yes.
And do you know how you were going to meet up to go smoke?
He said that he would come pick me up, but he didn't clarify who was picking me up. I don't remember exactly what he said, but all I know is that he wasn't the one that picked me up that night.
Okay. As far as going out that night, did you get ready to go out?
I just changed my clothes and I left whenever they came.
Did you put on any makeup?
No, I don't think so.
And did you tell your parents that you were leaving?
I think I told her I was leaving when I left the house, but I didn't specify what I was doing, or I didn't ask her to leave. I just left.
Okay. So, to your knowledge, was your mother aware that you were leaving?
She knew I left, but she didn't know where I was going.
Okay. So you said that 3 people picked you up in a car.
Yes.
Where did they pick you up at?
They picked me up outside of my house, probably not directly outside, but like on my street
Where were you living at that time?
with my parents.
And what was the address?
14907 Camino Rio.
And is that address located in Bear County?
It's in Helotes.
Okay. Do you know if it's in Bear County?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure.
And so these 3 individuals pick you up. Do you remember what they were driving?
I believe it was a gray vehicle.
Okay. And did you recognize any of those 3 individuals that came and picked you up?
No.
Did you subsequently learn who they were?
I don't remember if I asked and much questions, but I didn't realize what was going on until after I arrived to Jada King's apartment, that he was on house arrest.
So, on March 29th or after, did you, after that, find out who some of these individuals were?
I found out that night.
Was one of the people that was in the car Alexis Morganfield?
Yes, he was the driver.
And do you see Alexis Morganfield in the court today?
Yes,
Can you point at him and identify him by a piece of clothing?
he's wearing a black suit.
And Your Honor, may the record reflect that this witness has identified the defendant. So Alexis Morganfield was driving, and so there was 2 other individuals in the car.
Yes.
Do you remember when you got in the car, where you sat in the car?
I think I was in the right side in the back.
And when you got in the car, what was your understanding of what was going to happen?
I just assumed we were all going to go meet up with Jada King and smoke.
And so, do they drive you?
Yes.
And do you eventually go to Jada King's house, apartment, residence?
Yes.
And do you know where that was?
No, it was an area that I was not familiar with.
Do you remember how long it took you to get over there?
Probably like 20 minutes.
And on the ride from your house to Jada King's apartment, what was going on in the car?
They were playing music. We didn't talk very much. I remember them asking what I was up to since it was a pandemic. I told them I hadn't been doing much, but that's the only thing I remember from our conversation.
So when you get to Jada King's apartment, what happens next?
I remember we all got out the vehicle and we were approaching the front of his apartment, and then he comes out because it was on the first floor, so right outside the car. And he comes out and he asks me to talk with him in the car.
Okay,
So
you said you got out of the car.
mhm,
Did the other three individuals get out of the car with you?
yes,
And those three individuals that we're talking about, were any one of those three Jada King?
no,
So you said that he comes out and then you talk to him,
yes,
and then he tells you that he wants to talk in the car.
yes,
Do both of y'all get back in the car?
yes,
Does anybody else get in the car with you?
no,
Where in the car do y'all go into?
the back seat.
And when you're in the back seat, what happens next?
He started asking me for sex and oral sex, and I said no multiple times.
Okay. Do you know where the other three people were when this was happening?
I think they might have went inside the apartment, but I'm not exactly sure.
Could you see them for where you were sitting in the car?
No,
So he's asking for sex and oral sex and you're telling him no. Does, what happens after that?
I remember after a few minutes of me telling him no, he told me that he didn't know how his friends were going to feel about me not doing anything for either of them, and he didn't know if they were going to take me home. And that's when I started feeling like scared for my safety.
Okay, so what's going on in your head at this point?
I'm worried that I'm not going to get home.
And I should back up for a second. When you left the house, did you take your phone with you?
Yes, but I had recently gotten my phone stolen, so I was using an old phone that had no service on it, so I wasn't able to call anyone unless I had Wi-Fi.
Okay, so this phone that you had with you, unless you were using Wi-Fi, where you weren't able to make calls,
No, I was not.
were you able to text message people?
No.
So going back, Jada says, I don't know how my friends are going to feel about this. What happens after that?
He gets out the car, and then everyone else gets back in the car, the other three men.
Okay, and those three other individuals that get back in the car, are those the same three individuals that picked you up?
Yes, sir.
So after they get back into the car, what happens next?
We drive to go pick up weed.
Okay. And when you had mentioned earlier at the beginning of your testimony that y'all were going to smoke, what were y'all going to smoke?
Weed.
So you go to, y'all leave and y'all are going to go pick up weed.
Yes.
Do you remember how long it took you to get to your next stop?
Probably about 10 minutes.
Generally, do you know what area of town this was in?
I believe it was on the northeast side.
Okay. Was it near any particular thing or place that you recognized?
No.
So y'all go to pick up some weed. Y'all actually stop somewhere else?
No, we just stopped at the next stop was the apartment complex to pick up weed.
Okay. When y'all stop there, do you stay in the car?
I think I got out the car for a second to introduce myself to their friend who was selling them the weed. And then we got back in the car.
When you got out of the car, do you know if all of the other 3 individuals in the car with you got out?
Yes.
Okay. And then y'all have some conversation and then you go back into the car?
Yes.
What happens next?
After that, they drive again to a different apartment complex. And then
Okay. Do you know how long it takes you to get to the next apartment complex?
I think it was also around 10 minutes.
And are y'all talking or doing anything in the car during that drive?
I think we were just listening to music.
Any music in particular?
I probably rap music, but I don't remember for sure.
And when you get to the next location, what happens there?
They parked, and then when they were getting out of the car, I was going to get out the car, but then Alexis told me to sit there and wait, and I asked if I could have a water, and he said he'd bring me a water.
Okay. So that third location that you went to, do you know where you were going to?
No.
And you said that Alexis told you to stay in the vehicle.
Yes.
Where were you sitting in the vehicle?
In the back seat.
Was Alexis still driving?
No, he gotten out the car when he told me that.
Did the other 2 individuals in the car stay in the car?
No.
Did they get out?
Yes.
Do you know where they went?
I assumed that one of them lived there and they were going to go inside the apartments, but I didn't directly see them go inside anywhere.
Okay. So you say in the back seat, does Alexis get in the back seat with you?
He comes back after like a minute or so and he gets in the back seat with me.
What happens in the back seat?
He starts asking me similar questions and starts asking me for sex and oral sex, and I denied him as well. I kept saying no and that I didn't know him.
Okay. At that point, did you know who Alexis Morganfield was?
He ended up pulling out his phone to show me his Instagram account, which I was able to remember afterwards. But that was the only way I knew who he was.
Okay. Prior to that, had you ever heard of Alexis Morganfield?
No.
Had you heard any music that he had made?
No.
And you said that he showed you his Instagram profile. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you remember, was there like a name associated with that profile?
It was Lil Quali _.
Okay. Is there any particular reason that you remembered that name or that profile?
It was an easy name to remember, and I figured I would have to.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
All right, Sarah, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit Numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can remove those for me.
Your Honor, defense has not been shown these exhibits. If she is going to testify based on these exhibits, defense would ask to review them first.
All right. I think he's going to show the exhibits to the witness and then show them to you before he enters them
Thank
or
you.
seeks to enter them into evidence.
Thank you, Judge. Do you recognize these photographs?
Yes.
And as it relates in particular to State's Exhibit Number 1, you mentioned a Instagram profile with the name of Lil Kowal, right?
Yes.
The State's Exhibit Number 1 truly and accurately depict the Instagram profile that you saw that day.
Yes.
And that Instagram profile being the little Kowali.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 2, 3, and 4. States Exhibits 2, 3, and 4. Do all of those depict images of Alexis Morganfield?
Yes.
And all of these photographs, States Exhibits 2 through 4, are those from his Instagram profile?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, and what I should say, States Exhibits 2, 3, and 4, do they truly and accurately depict Alexis Morganfield in his Instagram profile?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, state would move to admit States Exhibits 1 through 4. I'm going to tender to defense for objections, if any, and as previously tendered in electronic discovery.
Your Honor, we need to ask a couple of questions of the witness to voir dire her before we can allow these to be admitted without objection.
All right, you may take the witness on voir dire.
Ms. Mondriano, did you?
Do you want to approach the witness?
That's fine. What has been marked as States Exhibit 1 through 4, which the prosecutor has just shown you. I'm going to hand these back to you. Did you provide these images to the state? Did you provide
I
these images to Bexar County DA's office?
don't remember. I think so. I did.
Okay. Do you know where these images came from?
Alexis's Instagram.
Did you look them up?
If I sent them in, then yes.
So you don't remember looking them up?
I don't remember specifically which images I looked up for sure.
So you don't know if the images that we're looking here are images that you looked up?
No, it was a long time ago. I don't remember.
And if you don't remember if these are images you looked up, then can you tell the court when you might have looked these images up or first looked up his Instagram account?
I looked up his Instagram account that same night everything happened.
But you don't know if these are screenshots or pictures that you took or that somebody else took or that's a mock-up made to look like an Instagram screenshot. Is that correct?
I'm almost sure that I did, but I can't say for sure.
So almost sure is not sure. Would you agree?
Mm,
Either you're sure or you're not sure. So you're a little bit unsure.
I just don't remember the specific images that I provided.
Your Honor, we would object in that the witness has not conclusively identified the images there
All right, may I see the state's exhibits?
and states exhibits to the bench.
All right, are those the defense's only objections?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, that will be overruled then. States exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 4 are admitted.
Honor defense would further urge that the proper predicate has not been made for the introduction of these exhibits
right,
before
that-
their introduction.
That will be overruled.
May I publish?
Yes.
Now, Sarah, you might be able to see this on the screen next to you. I'm going to show you what's been admitted in state exhibit number 1. I'm going to zoom in particular to this portion right here where it says Lil Kowali. Is that the same name that and same profile that you were shown on March 29th of 2020?
Yes.
In states exhibits number 2. Does that photo depict Alexis Morganfield?
Yes.
And do you recognize the other person in that photograph?
Yes, that would be his friend Jada King.
And that's that same Jada King that you went to the house with?
Yes.
Show you what's been admitted as states exhibit number 3. Is that depict the Alexis Morganfield?
Yes.
Same Alexis Morganfield that you identified previously in court?
Yes.
And finally, I'll show you what's been admitted as states exhibit number 4. It appears that there's 3 individuals on this in this picture. Which one, if any, is Alexis Morganfield?
He's in the middle.
Do you recognize any of the other 2 individuals?
I believe the man on the left is Sterling Green.
The very far left?
Yes.
Sarah, do you know why the defendant showed you his Instagram profile that day?
I think it was an attempt to show off or impress me because I repeatedly told him no and that I didn't know who he was.
When he showed you his Instagram profile, was that before, during, or after he was asking from sex and oral sex from you?
It was during. It was before it happened, but it was while he was asking me for it.
So when he's asking you for sex and oral sex, you said you were telling him no.
Yes.
What happens next?
He eventually pulled out his penis and he insisted, and I eventually gave in because I thought that if I didn't, I wouldn't get home that night.
When he pulled out his penis, do you remember what it looked like?
Yes.
And do you know what an erection is?
Yes, and it was erected.
Okay. And you said that you eventually gave in because you didn't think you were going to be able to go home.
Yes.
What do you mean by give in?
I ended up performing oral sex on him.
And by oral sex, if you can tell me like body parts, what does that mean?
My mouth, like on his penis.
Okay. And did his penis go in your mouth?
Yes.
Was he saying anything while you were doing that?
I don't recall anything, no.
Is this something you want to remember?
I don't think so. I don't remember him saying anything.
And eventually, do you stop performing oral sex on him?
Yes, after he ejaculated.
Okay. And do you remember where he ejaculated?
I think it was in my mouth.
Okay. So after he ejaculates in your mouth, what happens next?
We get out the car, or I don't think I got out the car, but I remember he got out the car and his other friend came inside the car with me.
And the other friend, do you know who that other friend was?
No,
Your
I
Honor?
didn't.
We had invoked a motion in limine regarding other actors, and we need to approach the bench because this is going to fall.
All right, if the parties approach. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you a brief recess. I'm going to give you a 15-minute break. Before you go, this is the instruction that you're all going to start memorizing, and you're going to know it every time I say it. You have heard some testimony in this case. You're not allowed to discuss it amongst yourself. You're not allowed to discuss it with anyone else. You're not allowed to deliberate at all. Again, you're not allowed to do any investigation in this case or anything of that nature. Does everyone understand? All right, so please make sure you keep your badges visible so that people will know that you're on a jury. So maybe other people won't be talking around you. So I'm going to have you brought back in at 10:15, okay? All right, everyone, please rise. All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, we're outside the presence of the jurors. State, you may ask your question.
Thank you, Your Honor. So going on to what we were talking about, what happens next after Alexis gets out of the vehicle?
His friend gets in the back seat of the car with me.
Okay, and do you know who that friend was?
I didn't know his name, no.
Okay, did you ever learn about who that person was?
No.
And when you're in the car, what happens next?
He also asked me similar questions. He was asking me for oral sex, and I said no, but he didn't touch me.
And do you know where Alexis was at this point?
No, I did not.
Okay. Was he in the vehicle?
No,
Were you able to see him when you were sitting in the vehicle at that point?
no.
And then this person asks you for sex. What happens next?
We eventually get out the car. He was visibly annoyed that I wasn't doing anything, but he didn't touch me. And then we get out the car, and then I find the other two outside, and I'm talking to all of them, telling them I want to go home. And asking if I can use one of their phones to call someone.
Okay. And when you're talking to all three of them, does that include Alexis Morganfield?
Yes,
Okay. And so you're requesting to go home?
yes,
And was that person you just described, were they also in that group of people that you were talking to, letting them know you wanted to go home?
yes.
And do you get any indication or idea that they're going to take you home?
No, they kind of ignored my question, didn't take me seriously.
And Judge, I think
That's the entirety of the testimony?
that's not the entirety of the rest of her testimony.
Oh, as it relates to any other individuals?
I believe so, Judge.
All right, defense, you have objections?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, please remain seated. I don't take it as a sign of disrespect. It's just easier for the microphones to pick up and easier for Brenda to hear.
Your Honor, our objection is based on the fact that her story involves four people, three primary people at this point, but only one person is facing charges. And whether the state is intending to do this or not, what is happening is that all of the possible bad acts of the group are effectively de facto being dumped on our client. By mentioning what another person did after our client, after Alexis Morganfield allegedly left the car and was not even on stage, so to speak. By introducing further testimony, there is no probative value, there is only prejudicial effect.
All right. State your response. And the response is to the witness stating that she was in a car with this other party. That other party asked her for oral sex. She said no. And then he didn't touch her. Explain to me, what is that probative towards?
Judge, I think in number one, it's contextual about it goes directly to her state of mind, why she's asking to go home. It's also probative of the conversation that happens afterwards, that these people are acting in concert with one another. She's letting them know, I want to go home. None of them are agreeing to let them go, or permitting her or giving her any indication that she's going to go home, which is obviously relevant for her state of mind. And so that's what we're tending to elicit it upon. We're not impugning Mr. Morganfield with he directed him or commanded him, but they are acting in concert with one another. And I think it's clear from the context of her conversation afterwards outside of the vehicle.
All right. The court's ruling with regards to the statement of the actor who is not on trial here stating that he wanted oral sex from her, that is sustained. Everything else is coming in. The fact that this other person was in the back seat of the car with her, that she talked to the other people and said, I want to go home, that's coming in. The fact that she says, may I use one of your your cell phones, so that I can, call somebody to come get me. All of that comes in. The fact that he requested oral sex from her is not admissible.
Okay, Judge, can I just have a moment to talk to my witness?
Yes,
Thank you. Can I have her step down to talk to her in the back?
yes. And if anyone needs to take a break, you have 5 minutes till the jury comes back. Deputy Mejia, you're so excellent. You're getting so excellent at this. We're ready.
All right, so jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. And jurors, whenever you're leaving, if you want to leave your pillows, you can. You can leave them in here. They'll be safe. The only people who are going to be sitting in this box are you all. And again, you can move in whatever seat you want to sit in, which I noticed there have been some changes. Keeps me on my toes. All right, State, you may
Thank you, Your Honor.
continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sarah, so I believe where we left off is that you were in the car with somebody. Once you eventually get out of the car again.
Mhm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
And when you get out of the car, where do you go?
I approach Alexis and the other two, telling them I want to go home. And they didn't show any indication that they would want it to take me home. And they were just ignoring me. And then Alexis asked me to talk in the car again.
Okay, so when you get out of the car, are you talking to the same three individuals that had picked you up?
Yes.
And one of those individuals was Alexis Morganfield.
Yes.
So after you talked to them, you said Alexis asked you to go back into the car,
Yes.
that same gray car,
Yes.
and you go into the car.
Yes.
And where do you go into the car?
We go in the back seat again.
Okay, does Alexis Morganfield go in the back seat again?
Yes.
And once you're inside the vehicle, what happened there?
He starts asking me to perform oral sex on him again.
Okay,
And I said no again, that I didn't even want to do it the first time and that I wasn't going to do it again.
okay. Is he, other than asking you to perform oral sex on him again, is he saying anything else to you?
After a while of asking me and me saying no, he proceeded to touch me.
Okay, and where is he touching you?
He touched me over my clothing when he was grabbing my crotch, my vagina.
You said your crotch?
Yes.
Is that, do you refer to that as something else?
Vagina.
Okay, and you said that was over your clothing?
Yes.
What part of his body or object is he using to touch you?
His hands.
Is he saying anything while he does that?
Not that I remember, just him asking me for oral sex and sex.
Okay.
And he also, I remember him lifting up my shirt and grabbing and kissing my breasts.
Okay, so when he touched your breasts, what part of his body was touching your breasts?
His mouth.
Okay, any other part of his body?
No.
Did his hands ever touch your breasts?
Oh, yes, his hands too.
Okay, and when he's doing that, what's going on through your mind?
I was crying. I was scared that it wasn't going to end, that I wasn't going to be able to go home that night. And that didn't stop him.
Okay, and when he touched your breast with his hand, was that over or underneath clothing?
Underneath clothing.
Was skin touching skin?
Yes.
When he touched, when you said he was kissing you, kissing your breast, it might sound like a silly question, but what part of his body was touching your breast?
His mouth.
And when his mouth is touching your breasts, is that over clothing or is it skin to skin?
It's skin to skin.
And you said during this whole period of time, you're crying,
Yes.
and Do you remember him saying anything to you?
Not anything else other than him asking me, persisting,
And asking you for what?
for sex and oral sex.
Does he eventually quit touching you?
Yes.
Do you know when that was?
We had probably been in the car for at least 15 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. And this is the second time that you're in the car with him alone?
Yes.
Do you remember the first time you were in the car with him alone? How long in the car you were with him?
Probably around the same time, maybe 20, maybe 30 minutes.
Okay. So after he quits touching you, what happens next?
I eventually convinced him to let me call my friend on his phone since I didn't have service on my phone.
Okay, so whose phone did you use?
I used Alexis Morganfield's phone.
Okay, and the friend that you contacted, who was the friend that you contacted?
His name was Brandon Johnson.
Okay. Is there any reason that you contacted Brandon Johnson?
We were very close friends at the time, and he lived in my neighborhood.
When you contact Brandon, you said that you used the phone?
Yes.
And how did you contact Brandon?
I called him, and then I said I would send him the location of the apartment complex that I was at. But then after the call, Alexis took the phone away from me, so I wasn't able to do that.
So you called him. When you called him, did you know your address that you were at?
No, I just told him I was at an apartment complex and that I knew that these guys weren't going to take me home and that I needed him to pick me up.
Okay. Did he agree to pick you up?
Yes.
And so after the phone call, were you able to send him your location?
No, Alexis said he would, but I ended up finding out later that he sent the name of a random apartment complex, so my friend couldn't find the location to come pick me up.
Okay. So how long do you, after he touches you, you get out of the car, you contact him, how long do you stay at that apartment complex?
After the fact,
After that?
probably not much longer. I remember at that point, since they were saying my friend was going to pick me up, they were telling me to get out of the car, and I didn't want to because I didn't want to wait with no phone by myself. And then I eventually got out the car, and then I was waiting for my friend, but I didn't know he wasn't going to show up.
Okay. So at that point, did you know where you were?
I just knew I was at an apartment complex. Didn't know where.
Okay. Did you know if anybody was ever going to pick you up?
At that moment, I didn't know for sure.
So you said you got out of the car
Yes.
and that you waited.
Yes, but they came back and told me to get in the car like a minute or two after that.
Okay. So where are they when they tell you to get back into the car?
They like pull out of the parking lot, and then I don't know where they went. I don't even know if they even left, but they just circled around and came back after like a minute and told me to get in the car and that they would take me home.
Do you remember who was driving at that point?
Alexis.
And were the same three individuals in the car the same three individuals that picked you up?
Yes.
Do you get into the car?
Yes.
Do you know where you go after that?
We drove to the gas station because they wanted to buy a pack of backwoods
Okay.
to smoke.
And what, for us who don't know, what are backwoods?
They're like cigars that you can unroll them and put weed in them and smoke them.
Okay. And you said you stopped at a gas station.
Yes.
Do you know how long it took you to get from that apartment complex to the gas station?
I would say 5-10 minutes at the most.
Did you ever learn the location of that that gas station?
Yes. I had to eventually have my friend pick me up, so he was able to get the address.
So you said they stopped because they were going to go buy these cigars.
Mm-hmm.
Do you stay in the car at the gas station?
After they leave, after one, I don't remember which one went inside, I don't think it was Alexis. I think one of his friends went inside to purchase it. He came back in the car and then I got out and just walked. I ran inside the gas station
Why did you get out of the car at that point?
because I was fearing for my safety and I needed to ask someone for help to get home.
Okay. At that point, did you have any indication or idea that you were actually going to be taken back home?
No.
And you said you got out of the car and then you went inside the gas station?
Yes.
What did you do once you were inside the gas station?
I asked the cashier if I could use his phone to call someone, and he initially said no because he didn't know what was the reason. I guess he didn't trust me.
Were
And
you eventually able to call somebody?
Yes, after he saw me crying, and one of the other boys came into the gas station trying to get me to come back outside, and they pulled up the car right outside of the gas station. And he was trying to get me to come back, and I just was shaking my head and crying. And that's when the cashier realized that something was wrong. And he asked me what was going on after the man left the gas station.
Okay. Who did you call?
I called Brandon to pick me up, and I might have called my mom too, but I don't remember for sure.
And did somebody eventually come pick you up?
Yes,
Who picks you up?
Brandon
And when he picks you up, where does he take you?
takes me home to my house.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes,
How many?
I have 3.
And sisters or brothers?
I have 1 brother and 2 sisters.
Order wise, kind of birth order wise, where are you?
I'm the youngest.
So all of your siblings are older.
Yes.
You said you might have talked to your mom about it. Did you talk to any of your siblings?
On the ride back to my house, I called my sister off of Brandon's phone because I figured her and my mom would be worried since I wasn't able to contact them on my phone that time that I was gone. And I just told her I was okay and that I would tell her what happened when I got home.
Eventually, are police called?
Yes, when I got home, I briefly told my sister what had happened to me, and she told me I needed to report it, and I didn't want to do it myself, so she said she'd call the cops for me.
Eventually, do you talk to any of the police?
Yes.
Did you have any medical exams that related to this case?
Yes, I got a rape test kit the next morning at the hospital.
Do you remember what hospital you went to?
I know it was in the medical center, but I don't remember exactly which one.
And you said you went the next morning?
Yes.
And tell me about that medical exam. What was it like?
It was very uncomfortable. They had to swab different parts of my body that had been touched, and I gave them a statement of what had happened to me.
Do you remember, did you get any medicine there?
I don't remember if I got any medicine. I don't think so.
Okay. Was your body looked at?
Yes.
After your medical exam, did you talk to any other police officers? Do you remember?
I know the detective had called me and I talked to him, but I didn't talk to any police officers after that.
After what happened on March 29th of 2020, did you ever have any contact with with Alexis Morganfield after that?
Yes.
How did that come to happen?
He was calling Brandon's phone number since I had texted Brandon off of Alexis's phone. He had his phone number, and he was calling him from his phone number and from different phone numbers. Brandon never answered him though.
Okay. So how did you contact, or how did you come into contact with Alexis Morganfield after that?
I had called him myself. Once Brandon told me that he had been spam calling him. And I asked him why he was calling Brandon. And he said he didn't know.
Objection. Hearsay. She is admitting statements of others for the truth of the statement.
This is Mr. Morganfield's statement.
Understand?
All right, that'll be overruled.
You can say what he said.
He said he felt bad. He didn't directly tell me what he felt bad about, but he said he felt bad and that he offered me $100, but he never specified.
Okay.
Before.
What was your purpose in calling Alexis Morganfield?
I recorded the call. I wanted to see what he had to say.
And so you recorded that phone call?
Yes.
So this phone call, was it just audio?
It was a FaceTime call.
Okay. And how did you record it?
I recorded it from my phone and I was using my laptop for FaceTime.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Sarah, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 5 for identification purposes. Do you recognize this disc?
Yes.
And how do you recognize it?
I listened to it this morning and I initialed it.
Okay. So are your initials on the disc in State's Exhibit number 5?
Yes.
And is this the recording that you took of your FaceTime conversation with Alexis Morganfield?
Yes.
And does it truly and accurately depict your conversation with him?
Yes.
And does it contain the entire conversation?
No, I didn't record the whole thing.
Okay. So other than, I guess I should say, did you, after you made the recording, did you alter the recording in any way?
No.
Okay. Did you shorten it in any way?
No.
Is this the entire recording that you made?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, state would move to State's Exhibit number 5 and tendering to defense for objections, if any, and is previously tendered in electronic discovery.
Your Honor, defense has been able to review what we believe is a 34-second video clip. And because it is missing the context, we would object to its admission simply because of the rule of completeness. It is going to be misleading unless we can see the whole conversation. We
Alright.
believe that there was a longer recording. We believe that the recording was shortened. We believe what we have here is not the whole call,
All right,
and that will be misleading.
do you want to take the witness on board here?
Yes.
All right.
We would ask a couple of questions about this. At some point, you say you started recording. Is that right?
Yes.
For a call this important, wouldn't it be important enough to record the whole thing?
I didn't initially plan to record it until after I was on the phone with him.
Okay. About how long was the whole call? Do you have an idea?
It was probably less than a minute. It was very short.
Okay. So what you're saying is that what we're missing is less than 30 seconds. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, if this is the 34-second clip.
Yes.
And would you agree that there are statements that Mr. Morganfield made that are not on this because you didn't start recording right away? Would you agree that there are missing statements?
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that this is not the entirety of the conversation?
Yes.
No further objections. We would renew our standing objection, Your Honor.
State.
Your Honor, she's responded that this is the full entire recording that she had made. We were obviously clear that it was not the entire conversation. However, it truly accurately represents that portion of the conversation. And so I don't believe that any of this would go to the admissibility. It potentially could go to the weight, but not the admissibility.
Your Honor, as it is currently sliced and diced, its prejudicial effect is going to exceed its probative value. We would object under Rule 403.
And Judge, just clear, her testimony is that she did not manipulate this in any way. This is her entire recording.
No, I understand. The problem is the court hasn't heard the recording.
Okay.
So, Jurors, I'm going to give you a 10-minute break. And then we will come back again. You've heard some of the testimony. You're not allowed to deliberate or talk amongst yourselves about anything you've heard or with anyone else. Does everyone understand? All right, everyone, please rise for the jury. All right, everyone, please be seated.
Judge, I'm assuming you would like me to play it for you.
Yes. Britta. And then this will give everybody a chance to see if the equipment is working.
All right, Judge. Oh, let me stop this.
And just make sure you click on the play sound.
And you're texting him, you're telling him to answer your calls. Like, why?
Oh, because I want to see it. Sorry.
Why?
Because I ain't know. I really was feeling bad.
Huh?
I really feeling bad. I really just, I ain't gonna lie.
You feel bad?
Sorry, I'll really give you some money. Look, when you forgive me, I'll give you $100 real this week.
$100? You don't know what fucking happened when
Okay, so the court has a question as to why does it end? So he makes a statement and then her response is cut off.
Judge,
Does anybody want to ask that question?
she testified to that fact that she cut off the recording.
Your Honor, as I recall, she did not testify. She cut off the recording. She testified she started recording it.
Does anybody want to question the witness?
Sure, Judge.
Okay.
Sarah, why do you quit recording when you quit recording?
I don't remember why, but I did cut it off at that point.
Okay. Is there any recording after this that you that was ever taken?
No,
But you stopped the recording at that point.
yes.
How long after you stop recording do you say on this phone call with Alexis Morganfield?
I believe it was just a few seconds.
Okay. So do y'all continue talking after that?
I just told him that my sister called the police and that was it.
I'll pass witness, Judge.
All right.
So you didn't start recording at the beginning of the conversation. You already said that, correct?
Yes.
And then you stopped recording during the conversation. Is that also correct?
Yes.
If this was so important, you would have let the recording finish the call. I mean, was there any reason you wanted to keep out what came after your recording?
No, I don't remember why. It was over 2 years ago.
Okay, but you can't produce the speech that my client may or may not have said before the recording, and you can't say what he may or may not have said after the recording. You can't produce that, correct?
Mm,
So, I
can
mean,
you repeat your question?
you can't provide the court with the words that the exact words my client said. You can't provide the court with the recording of what happened before you started recording or after you ended recording, correct?
Yes.
So what we have basically is very
Excuse
poor
me.
audio quality.
I'm
in
sorry,
two sentences.
sorry,
Is that right?
sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
All right. Mr. Morganfield. Everybody in this courtroom is an adult because this is an adult court. You are not allowed to speak to anyone in the audience. If you do, guess what? That audience member is going to be removed. This is not a time for people to have visits. They need to have visits elsewhere. Does everyone understand? If that occurs again, I'm emptying it. So they will not be here. And I'm not going to try to figure out who it is you're speaking to. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am, I wasn't trying to speak.
No, do you understand? All right, continue with your question.
So what we have is maybe one or two sentences spoken by Mr. Morganfield, nothing before, and whatever he said after that is just gone. That's, I mean, I'm not missing something here. Am I? That's what we have, right?
Correct.
All right. All right, the court is going to do a balancing test. The court is finding that it's more prejudicial than probative, and the defense objection is sustained. We're going to take a break. And everyone, if you want your break, take it now. We're going to come back at 11 and bring the jury back in at 12:30 for lunch. Brennan, is 12:30 for lunch good for you? Okay. And state it's your witness.
Judge, and just for purposes of the record, we're offering state's exhibit number 5.
All right, the state's exhibit number 5 in regards to defense's objection that will be sustained.
So Sarah, we briefly talked about state's exhibit number 5 in that conversation that you had with Alexis Morganfield. Do you know when that was?
I believe it was the following day or a couple days after March 29th.
Okay. And you have reviewed state's exhibit number 5 before today, right?
Yes.
And you also reviewed it today.
Yes.
Did it refresh your memory as to the conversation that you had with him?
Yes.
Do you remember what words he used when he talked about, you said like mentioned like an apology?
Yeah, he said
Objection, hearsay.
That'll be overruled.
You can say.
can you repeat the question?
You had mentioned something about like an apology.
Mhm.
Do you remember what words Alexis Morganfield used?
Objection, leading the witness.
Sustained.
Um,
Do you remember, don't ask the question. Do you remember testifying early about him mentioning an apology?
yes.
Objection, same objection, Your Honor.
All right, that'll be overruled.
What words did Alexis Morganfield use?
He said he felt bad.
Did he say what he felt bad about?
No.
Again, prior to March 29th of 2020, had you ever met Alexis Morganfield?
No.
After March 29th of 2020, excluding this conversation, have you ever talked with Alexis Morganfield?
Not in person, no.
So is it fair to say the only in-person interaction you had with Alexis Morganfield was on March 29th of 2020?
Yes.
And do you remember what he was doing during that phone call?
He was in a vehicle with some other friends.
Okay. And can you see him?
Yes.
And it's the same Alexis Morganfield you remember from March 29th of 2020.
Yes.
What else did he say on that phone call?
He said he felt bad and that he wanted to give me money as an apology. He wanted to give me $100.
Okay. Did he say specifically about what the $100 was for?
No.
During that phone call, did he ever tell you to stop doing anything? In particular, did he tell you to quit making false allegations against him?
I don't remember exactly. No, I don't.
Did he tell you to quit slandering him?
I'm not sure. No.
Did he tell you to quit posting things about him?
No.
Did he say anything about telling you to stop talking about him?
No.
And so, as far as that recording is concerned, why did you end the recording?
Because the rest of the recording was just me yelling and I hung up on him. Or the rest after the recording, I just yelled that my sister called the police and I hung up on him.
And might seem like a silly question, but did you ever take $100 from him?
No.
You take anything from him?
No.
After that date, after March 29th of 2020 and your subsequent phone call, you said a couple days later, did you ever have any in-person contact with Alexis Morganfield?
No.
At that point, did you know how old Alexis Morganfield was?
No.
Judge, I'll pass the witness at this point.
Defense.
Your Honor, the cross-examination could take some time. Does the court want to consider breaking for lunch
No.
and doing that stuff to come back?
You may proceed.
Please, the court. I had a few questions about some things that you just said. One of the things that you said was that you went to alternative school, excuse me, with Sterling Green. Did you say that?
Yes.
But isn't it true that you told police that you met him at Juvenile Justice Academy?
It's still alternative school. I didn't specify.
Okay.
That's what I was referring to.
And you said that through Sterling Green, you got into contact with his brother known as Jada King. Is that correct?
Yes, he
That
messaged.
was through Sterling, right?
I never talked to Sterling about him. All I know is Jada King messaged me and I made the
Okay.
connection that that was his brother.
Got it. So according to your testimony earlier, you had a plan to get together with Jada King, get together and smoke weed, correct?
Yes.
And your plans to meet up and travel to his location were done through direct messaging on Instagram, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, your earlier testimony said that you were expecting Jada King to come and get you himself initially, right? I mean, that's what you said, right?
Yes.
Okay. Whom you had never met. Okay. But instead you got into the car, according to your own testimony, you got into a car that you'd never seen before with three strangers. That was what you said, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You also testified that at the time you got into a car with three strangers to go meet somebody you'd never met to smoke weed. And by weed, I want to make sure I'm clear. By weed, we mean marijuana, is that correct?
Yes.
And at the time you got into the car with three strangers to go smoke weed, you did not have a working mobile phone on you, correct?
Correct.
Just want to make sure I understood. Now, if your mom, actually, let me just ask, who is Viorica Pundorianen?
My mother.
Okay. And do you recall whether police questioned her as well? Did police ever talk to your mom?
I don't recall.
You don't recall. Okay. So if your mom had told police that you were going skateboarding earlier that day, would that be the truth?
No.
And if your mom said that when you went out a second time, you told her you were going skateboarding again,
I don't recall.
that would, okay, you don't recall, okay. And if your mom had told police that you had makeup on the second time you went out to go skateboarding, would that be the truth or a lie?
May have been the truth. I don't remember.
Okay. Now, according to your story, at some point, the gray car with you in it drove to a location where there was a weed dealer. And then after that interaction, you said that you got back in the car. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So you got out of the car and there was another person present,
Yes.
but then you got back in the car.
Yes, because
Okay.
they were talking to him.
Just asking for a yes or no. Either you got back in the car or you didn't. You got back in the car, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, a little bit later, according to your testimony, everybody got out of the car. You said that Alexis offered you something to drink, water, and you said that you were alone for at least a minute. You were asked, were they right around there? No. You could have gotten out of the car because nobody was holding you there, right? I mean, yes or no? You could have gotten
Yes.
out of the car. Okay. I mean, the door handles on the inside of the car were there and they worked, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay. But you didn't leave, according to your story.
No.
Okay. And according to your story, the various incidences that evening happened at apartment complexes, correct?
Yes.
Now, these were not abandoned parking complexes. These were places where people actually, a number of people actually live, right? I mean,
Yes.
okay, they were not abandoned. Okay. And according to your testimony, you said other things, but if I'm remembering correctly, you said that you got in the back seat with Alexis Morganfield no
Yes.
less than twice. Not
Yes.
just once, but twice. Did I hear that wrong, or did you say you got in the back seat twice?
Yes.
Okay. Now, from your earlier statements, before anybody else may have done anything else, you testified under oath that you and Alexis were kissing, correct?
Yes.
And you also said that at some point in time, he kissed your breast.
Yes.
Okay. Now, was there any type of material or barrier between his mouth and your mouth? I mean, or was skin actually touching skin?
Skin was touching skin.
And when he kissed your breast, was skin actually touching skin, or was there some kind of a barrier that would have blocked DNA?
Skin was touching
Skin
skin.
was touching skin. Now, you gave statements to two different officers. According to your testimony, you talked to the police officer that night, whom I believe was Officer Sandoval. Do you remember that conversation at your home on your couch?
Yes.
Okay. And then what appears to be 4 or 5 days later, you had a telephone call with Detective Benavidez. Do you remember that telephone call?
Yes.
Okay. And at the end of that telephone call, by the way, with Detective Benavidez, do you remember having to hand the phone back to your mother because you had a school project that you had to get online for? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So you do remember handing the phone with the detective on it to your mom so she could talk to him. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, it's true, isn't it, that when you talked to Officer Sandoval, that you said you were only touched over your clothing. But when you talked to Detective Benavidez 5 days later, you changed your story to where he touched you under your clothing. That is correct, that you gave two different stories, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, according to your story, you got into the car not once, not twice, multiple times. You got in the back seat twice with Alex. You got in the car again after you scored weed, excuse me. And then you said at some point that you were driven to the gas station to buy backwoods. You told us about backwoods, right?
Yes.
Okay. At this point, regardless of everything else you're still saying happened in your story, at this point, you're still hoping to smoke weed, aren't you? Yes or no?
No, I never expressed that. I expressed that I wanted to go home.
Okay. So you weren't waiting around for the cigars? You?
No, I told them I didn't care anymore. I
Understand.
wanted to go home.
Your Honor's request that the extra be stricken.
All right, this is the thing. So the way it works, and to make it easy for Brenna, when a question is asked, then the witness will answer. We will wait for the witness's answer. If there is any objection, let the court know and the court will make a ruling. But Brenda can only take down if one person is talking at a time. You may ask your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before the phone. I want to make sure I'm not accidentally broadcasting. Okay. Before the FaceTime phone call that you have spoken about, it is true that you had posted some very defamatory material about Alex online, isn't it?
Before the phone call?
Before the phone call.
That is not true.
So you're denying that you posted anything
I
about him
posted-
before the phone call?
I posted things afterwards,
Okay, but
from
not
what I
before.
remember. Yes.
According to your story, referring to the first time that you were in the back seat with Mr. Morganfield, according to your story, you said that there was kissing of the mouth, kissing of the breast, and that you ultimately, I believe your words were, you went down on him. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time that you say that you went down on him, nobody was physically forcing you to do that, were they? We're just talking about physical force. There was no
No.
physical force making you do that, was there?
No.
Nobody threatened to hurt you if
No.
you did that. And so you did it because at that time you chose to.
After I repeatedly said no, yes, I did choose to do it.
At that moment before you did it, you made the decision to do it. That's all I'm trying to establish.
Yes.
Thank you. And you admit that you got in and out of the car several times, and a lot of these were apartment complexes. You said these were not abandoned complexes, so these are places where somebody lived. If you had wanted to leave this group, as you say you were with, you could have run to a door, knocked on it, you could have asked somebody for help, but you didn't, did you?
No, I assumed my friend was coming to pick me up.
Objection? Just asked for a yes or no, Your Honor.
That'll be overruled. You can answer the question.
One moment, Your Honor. Now, you had an interview on March 30th with SAPD Officer Sandoval. We've talked about that already. That was the one in your living room sitting on your couch. You remember that interview?
Yes.
Okay. And in that interview, reading from the transcript, I simply want to read you a statement as you said it and make sure that I heard it right. According to your words, I gave him oral sex. I mean, he didn't force me to, but he kept pressuring me and I did it. Just want to know, are those your words?
Yes.
Would pass the witness, Your Honor.
State.
Thank you, Your Honor. So on cross-examination, Mr. Stevenson asked you whether you chose to do this. You remember him asking you that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and you stated that you made the choice to do it? Did you feel that you had a choice?
No,
Why is that?
because I didn't have a way to get home. And he wasn't taking no for an answer.
And again, when this is happening, is there anybody else with you?
No.
So there's these three individuals, correct?
Yes.
Out loud.
Yes.
Did you have a cell phone that was working? Do
No.
you have any way of contacting anybody to help you?
No.
Or anybody that you knew to help you?
No.
Mr. Stevenson asked about posting defamatory things about Mr. Morganfield. And you said that you had done that after you had called him.
Yes, it was, I think it was like weeks or even a month after.
Okay. And what things did you post?
That he was a rapist. I don't remember exactly my words, but I did make an attempt to call him out on social media.
And these, as Mr. Stevenson would say, defamatory post. Do they relate to anything other than the sexual assault?
No.
Did you talk about anything else about Mr. Morganfield?
No.
Mr. Stevenson talked about the first statement that you gave to the first officer that you talked with, which was Officer Christian Sandoval. Do you remember him asking you that?
Yes.
Do you remember speaking with him?
Yes.
Do you remember everything that you told him?
No, it was a long time ago.
Did you review any recordings or written statements or reports that related to that specific conversation with Officer Sandoval?
I don't believe so. I know I listened to a recording with the other detective Benavides.
Okay. Is it fair to say that your memory of your conversation with Detective Benavides is better than your conversation with Officer Sandoval?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson, he asked you a lot about these apartment complexes that you were at. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Did you Any of those 3 locations, any of 3 apartment complexes, did you know where you were at?
No,
Did you know anybody at any of those apartment complexes?
no,
Had you met anybody at any of those particular apartment complexes before?
no,
Um, had you ever been to those apartment complexes before?
no,
Um, were you even familiar with that area of town?
no.
And so in your mind, what were your options?
I was relying on my friend to come pick me up. I thought, but then Alexis took the phone and I wasn't able to send him the address. So I didn't feel like I had any options at that moment.
And prior to the sexual assault, did you make efforts to get back home?
No.
Did you request to go back home?
You said prior to
Yes.
no.
Did you did you want to engage in these acts?
No.
Had you expressed that to Alexis Morganfield?
Yes.
How?
By saying no. And I think I made it very clear when I was crying.
I'll pass the witness.
Defense.
Wanted to clarify one last thing. The state was just talking about these other apartment complexes, which we've agreed they were not deserted. There were people living there. But it seems like every time that you have a chance to go outside of the car or ask a stranger for help, instead you choose to stay in the car or get back in the car because in your mind it was safer in the car than it was alone or with a stranger. Isn't that right?
Correct.
No further questions.
I have no further questions, Ms. Witness.
All right, is this witness excused or subject to recall?
Subject to recall, Your Honor.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and the defense. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right, you can step down. State, call your next witness.
State calls Officer Sandoval, Christian Sandoval.
All right, can you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand and take a seat. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Officer Christian Sandoval.
All right, I'm going to need you to speak up so that the jurors can hear and that the court
Ready?
reporter can hear.
Officer Christian Sandoval, San Antonio Police Department.
All right, state.
Good morning, Mr. Sandoval, or Officer Sandoval. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Can you tell us how long you've been with the San Antonio Police Department?
Approximately 3 years.
3 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you do anything before you began your employment with the San Antonio Police Department?
Yes, I was a police officer in El Paso.
Okay, and how long were you a police officer there?
Approximately 6.5 years.
Okay, did you do anything before that?
Private security.
Okay, what kind of security?
I was private security for a individual at his residence.
Okay, and so you were in charge of making sure he was safe?
Just securing the grounds.
Okay.
He actually had an actual executive protection. I was there for the residence itself.
Okay, and did you have to go through any training when you began your service at the El Paso Police Department?
Yes, the academy is approximately 7.5 months.
Okay, and what types of things did you do there?
We go over penal code, traffic code, mental health, shooting, tactics, self-defense, driving, all the usual stuff that you do at a police academy.
Okay. And so did you have to do those same things when you came to San Antonio?
Yes, I did. I had to do the academy all over again.
Okay, and how long was the academy here?
Approximately 7.5, 8 months.
Okay. Did you get any specific training in certain areas, or was it kind of a general training?
I believe it would be more of a general training.
Okay. And so when did you actually begin your employment here in San Antonio?
January 2019.
And what were you assigned to do?
I was at the academy at that date.
Okay. What were you assigned to do after you graduated the academy?
I went to Peru, dog watch, which is the graveyard shift, the night shift,
Okay.
approximately October
What year?
2019.
Okay. What does that consist of?
My probation year?
Yes.
Yes. Probation is when you'll do your you'll ride with an FTO, and your FTO will evaluate your performance. There's 17, 21 categories. I don't recall, such as my initiative, my general knowledge, my safety, procedures, radio, penal code, traffic code, stuff like that.
Okay. And then were you employed with the police department on March 29th of 2020?
Yes,
And what was your role at that time?
I was a patrol officer.
What does that consist of?
Patrol officer, I respond to calls of service. So when someone calls 911, we'll go ahead and respond. Whatever the call, it could be a theft, a burglary, auto accident, or in this case was a sexual assault.
Okay. Were you assigned to a specific area?
Yes, I am. You're designated a certain district at the beginning of each shift. Me, since I'm not a district officer, I do rotate between different districts.
Okay. And do you remember what area you were assigned to in March of 2020?
Only there was a 3 side. I couldn't be more specific than that.
Okay. It was a while ago. It's fine. And so how did you become involved with this case?
I was dispatched to the call.
And do you remember what information you received through the dispatch?
Dispatch said that it was a secondhand information that the caller was calling for her sister, that she was sexually assaulted.
Okay. And so what location did you arrive to?
I do not recall the block number, but Camino Rio.
Okay. That was the name of the street.
Yes, I believe so.
Do you remember if that was in Bexar County?
Yes, ma'am.
And what exactly was that location? Was it a home?
It was a residence. Yes, a house.
Okay. And do you know whose residence it was?
No,
Who did you meet when you arrived there?
I met with the victim and the mother.
Okay. And do you remember what was their demeanor when you met them?
Well, when I first got there, the victim said that she didn't want her sister to call, but the sister did call, and then she did wind up giving me the story of what happened to her.
Okay. When she told you her story, did she seem upset?
No,
Did she seem nervous?
a little hesitant. I wouldn't say nervous.
Okay. How would you describe her?
A little bit reluctant. Like I said, her sister called on her behalf.
Mhm.
She didn't want to go ahead and make the initial outcry herself. She was a little bit hesitant, but then talked to her, and then she was willing to give me the story, and she was very cooperative, gave me information, as much details as she was able to provide.
Okay. How old was she?
16 years old.
Okay. And had you ever met her before?
No,
Okay. Do you remember who else was there with her?
her mom.
Was it just her mom?
Yes,
Okay. And did you speak with her mom?
I did.
And how did her mom seem to you?
Mom was a little bit concerned. She wasn't, I wasn't overly angry, but she knew that something happened, and she was concerned about her daughter. She had some questions about the process of what's going on. But other than that, the victim asked the mom to step off, off to the side so she could talk to me a little bit more in private, her not in the exact same room. We were talking in the living room. So I just asked her to kind of step off to the side.
Okay.
Um,
Had you gone out to sexual assault calls before?
Yes, I have.
About how many?
I do not recall that.
Is it more than 10?
Yes,
Okay. And have you met with juvenile sexual assault victims before?
yes, I have.
Is it pretty normal for them to not want to speak to you in front of other individuals?
I would say it's a situational to with each individual victim. Some are and some are a little less.
And do you feel like there's a certain demeanor that they all have, or are they all different?
They're all a bit different, but usually remorse, sadness.
Okay, so was this victim's demeanor outside of the norm for what you've seen?
No.
Okay, so it was pretty normal for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What do you do when you're called out to these sexual assault cases?
Can you be a little bit more specific, please?
What kind of steps do you take when you get there?
I talk to the victim. I establish if a criminal element has been met. I get the story. I get as much details as I go ahead and I get, you know, the kind of like the who, what, when, where, why, how. After that, then we make our notifications. I'll call the detective and I'll call a supervisor to advise them of the situation. And then we go from there on, depending on what the situation is like. Do you want more details?
No, that's good. Did you do all those things in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And did you gather the information about where the offense occurred?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember the location that you received?
I do not have that committed to memory.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
There's exhibit stickers. We're on 6.
I'm sure you went to mark as stage exhibit 6. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize it to be?
My police report.
Does it look like an accurate representation of your,
Yes, it does.
and did you write the report yourself?
Yes, I did.
Does it look like it's been altered in any way?
And no, it does not.
I'm going
Okay.
to show the report to defense.
I need to ask a couple of questions. Officer Sandoval, my name is Ben Stevenson. I needed to ask. First of all, you said that you're meeting with the complaining witness with.
Excuse me,
with
could I
Sarah.
have parties approach? Could I have parties approach?
The defense acknowledges that that is Officer Sandoval's police report.
You want to take a minute to look through your report?
Sure, ma'am. Okay.
Okay, does that help to refresh your memory?
On the location where the assault occurred?
Yes.
Yes, at the Artesian Apartments.
Objection, hearsay.
That objection will be sustained.
Do you remember getting information from the victim about where the offense occurred?
Yes.
And do you remember deciding if that was in Bear County?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you decide?
Yes, it was in Bear County.
Again, further objection. If he is not an eyewitness, then he was not there and does not know where it occurred.
All right, any information that the witness is testifying to that he gained from the complainant in the case, unless there are some exceptions, the objection to hearsay will be sustained.
Did you receive any information about who the suspect was in this case?
Yes, I did.
What information did you receive?
From the victim, she gave me the information.
Objection, hearsay.
All right, that's a yes or no question. Did you receive any information?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And what the complainant said, the objection to hearsay will be sustained.
Did you receive any physical evidence in this case
No,
at the time of your report?
no,
Okay. And did you direct the victim to do anything at the time that you met with the victim?
yes, to get a SANE exam.
I'm sorry?
To get a SANE exam?
And what's a SANE exam?
A SANE exam is a forensic sexual assault examination.
Okay. And why did you recommend that?
To obtain evidence.
Okay. And do you know if the victim in the case did that?
I do not.
Okay. Did you contact your detective?
Yes, I did.
And did you do anything else after you spoke with the victim in the case?
No,
Well, you wrote up your report, right?
correct.
Okay. And is your report reviewed by anyone?
Yes, it's reviewed by a sergeant, then it also goes to a secondary review and then it gets approved. Then it gets assigned to a detective.
And did you have any other duties in this case after you left and spoke with the victim?
I did not.
I pass the witness.
You mentioned that there are several things that you routinely do when you're investigating certain types of cases, including sexual assault claims. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you mentioned that after you got her story, that you recommended a SANE exam, sexual assault nurse examiner exam. You did recommend that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you would just hypothetically recommend that in situations where it's logical that there would be DNA results. Well, I mean, right?
Yes, sir.
If somebody had tested, if somebody told you that they were sexually abused a year ago, you wouldn't send them for a SANE exam a year later, would you?
No, sir.
Okay. Or if the evidence, or pardon me, if the person's claims did not warrant a SANE exam. So you would only send somebody, just make sure I'm clear and I'll get off this horse. You would only send somebody for a SANE exam when it appears it would yield positive and useful results. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. And there's
No further questions.
What is your recommendation? Is there a time period recommendation for when you?
120 hours.
120 hours. And so if an offense happens within 120 hours of when you come into contact with the victim, you always recommend a SANE exam?
We offer it for them. Yes.
Okay. And do you know if there will actually be evidence?
I do not know because I'm not a SANE nurse.
Okay. So you don't know if there will be evidence, you just recommend the exam.
Correct.
Okay. And you don't know the percentage or the likelihood that evidence will exist.
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Defense.
I had one further question based on the fact that you had a very long interview with the complaining witness that day. Did she did admit, I mean, before you recommended the SANE exam, she did admit that she gave him oral sex. She
Yes.
admitted that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at the time that you were interviewing her, were you wearing an Axon body cam?
Yes, sir.
Is it fair that that Axon body cam would have recorded your interview with her?
Yes, sir.
So if the recording of that interview has her responding to your question and saying, I gave him oral sex, I mean, he didn't force me to.
I don't recall that, but
You don't recall the details.
no, sir. I do recall that she said that she gave him oral sex.
Okay. But he also, the part of the sentence, the same sentence, I mean, he didn't force me to. Do you recall that also?
If it's in my report, then she said that, sir.
If it's on, would you look in your report?
Sure.
Because we have the video, you had your report.
Sure. Is there a specific line or sentence where we could narrow it down? Okay, yes, I do see it.
No further questions.
State.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
The state,
Your Honor, that there is a uncertainty between myself and co-counsel. Did you say, did you record in your police report that she had said that she gave him oral sex and that he did not force her to? Is that in your police report?
No, sir.
It is not in your police report.
I wrote that he put his hand on her head and pushed her down and she gave him oral sex.
Your Honor, we'd like to approach.
You want to approach the witness?
We approach with,
No,
Opposing counsel.
is there a question you need to ask the witness?
we believe that this may be covered by the judge's ruling on one of the pre-trial motions.
All right, you may approach.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and give you your lunch break. We're going to come back and resume testimony at 1:30 p.m. So set your watches. I see everybody looking. There are plenty of places to eat downtown. You can walk along the river. There's a place that's across the street from the courthouse. We also have the cafeteria in the basement. But along the river, there are a lot of places where you can walk to if it's not 100 degrees outside. I haven't checked yet. But remember the court's instructions that you've heard some evidence in this case. You're not allowed to deliberate amongst yourself or talk about anything that you've heard with each other or to anyone else. Does everyone understand? And no investigation. Does everyone understand? Everything that you will need to know to make a decision on this case will come from inside the courtroom, okay? All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors. And if anyone wants to leave their pillows behind in the chair, you can.
There you go, sir.
They will be here when you get back. All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, so what is the issue? what is the testimony defense you believe this witness will give, or that's in some sort of report or video?
Sorry, the CCOT.
That's okay. Oh, there's a hump there. And has the witness been allowed to see the video?
He
Not
has,
to my knowledge.
he has watched the body cam, Your Honor.
I can, we have the recording here and I can direct us to within
So this is what we're
probably
going,
30 seconds.
all right, so this is what we're gonna do. Whatever portion it is of the body camera, just play it for the officer.
Okay.
And I'm gonna let Brenda take her break. And we're gonna come back at 1:30 and the court will make its ruling.
Thank you, Judge.
All right.
Got it.
And that way, and if you all need to, if there's gonna be more questions about his body cam,
There's
if you,
only the one, I think. I'm sorry.
all right. If that's okay. If you need, or there are gonna be more questions about it, please just re-show him
Okay.
the entire video cam. But the court will say that I made my ruling with regards to hearsay statements from the witness in regards to the complainant.
Right.
So if the defense is opening that door, then the door is open and people can walk in that door however they see fit. All right, so I'm gonna stop live streaming and we're gonna take our break and you all can